Hey friends, David Paulides, Canine Missing Project. Copyrighted edition for our video page. And this is Huck TV, and my executive producer is here, and she is very happy with what we're going to do today. And I thank you for being here, because it's going to be an exciting project. Yes, it is. But first, our third documentary on missing people is going to happen November 12th. It's the premiere date in Tempe, Arizona. We hope to see you there, and you can find it on our website. Any Bigfoot search at yahoo.com is the email, and you can email me there. But this is a historic event. Yes, very historic. Because we're going to do something here that we've never done before. I've been asked a million times, but now we start the walk. What that is I'm going to explain to you the world of Bigfoot in a class called Bigfoot 101. And this is class number 1. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of opinion out there. There's nothing short of opinions on Bigfoot. You have TV shows that go out and bang on walls. You got TV shows that walk around in the night and everything that goes boo. You have TV shows that go out and try to hunt it. The idiocy associated with some of these shows is beyond words, and I kid you not, beyond words. How many times do you go out doing the same thing? The same exact thing, and expect something to be different, and nothing changes. And you still have an audience. That's what's amazing to me. Now, I don't blame the people involved with the show. If they're getting ratings, God bless them. But for people who want a little more on their table, I would think that someone would have come along by now and a network would have grabbed it to talk about it. But I don't think that many of the people out there in TV world want a real depth program, if you know what I mean. They want a show where it won't challenge your thinking, it won't disrupt the audience, and you can just kind of sit there every week and I'm sorry, the people I work with, that's kind of the way we view most of this. There's so much more that could have been done, that hasn't been done, that won't be done, that it gets very frustrating. But my journey is different than anyone's out there, and therein lies the secret. Way back when, I was working for a technology company. And I was working for some people that were brilliant. And they had an encounter when they were younger with a creature that would be a Bigfoot. And they found each other. They made this company huge. And one thing led to another. They started talking, and they realized that they each had an encounter when they were young with a Bigfoot. A very, very bizarre set of circumstances. Almost identical for both of them. Up in the Sierras, they saw one. The rest is history. Well, I was leaving technology because I had some young kids at the time. And I had already resigned from the police department, did my 20 years, and went on to bigger and better things. Wanted to commit myself to the kids. So I told them I was leaving, and they said, okay, and they didn't say anything. 2 weeks passed, I'm getting ready to go, and they call me in their office, and they go, hey, we have a business proposition for you. I go, business proposition? Said, yeah, this is going to sound odd, but you're the right guy to do this. You're very down the middle of the road, very methodical, and we want you to do an investigation for us, and we pay for the whole thing, pay for your time. I said, and before they even said anything, I said, I'm not interested. I got my kids, and I'm going to be committed to them. And I have 50-50 custody, 1 week on, 1 week off. And I thought about it for a split second. I said no, because I was also coaching hockey and doing some other things. It was during hockey season. And then about a month goes by. They ask me to lunch. I go out to lunch with them, pitch it again. This time they say, hey, you do it at your own time. This is a really interesting investigation, Dave. I said, okay, well, I'm eating lunch. You got me as a captive audience. What do you got? And then they start telling this story about Bigfoot. They said, Dave, I know it sounds odd, but we want you to prove if it's real or if it's not. We finance the whole thing. We'll pay you for your time. Whatever you come up with, we'll live with it. Whatever you say to do, if it makes sense to us, we're going to do it. And you need to hire experts, hire them. You need to get things done, get them done. If you need money, call us. We'll give you a budget. And I said, that's pretty weird. I don't think my family would look proud on me for doing this. And I didn't even have anything of interest in the topic at the time. Might have read some books when I was real young, and I didn't really have an opinion about it either. So I said, I'll think about it. Well, a couple months go by, I'm coaching, things are going good, kids are having fun, everything's great. I was divorced, and guys say, hey, let's go to lunch again. So we go to lunch, and this time they put it heavy on me. Dave, this could be a world issue. This is something big. Now, it's either a giant hoax, which we don't think, or it's something very true and real. Make a long story short, I tell them, okay, give me 2 weeks of researching the topic myself at a high level, and let me just see what I can come up with to give me some feelings about what I can do and what I can't do. Now I'll get back to you. So remember, I was living in Northern California at the time, in the suburb of San Jose. I was living in Los Gatos. Pretty upscale community. And people don't talk about this kind of stuff. Even most of my friends don't talk about this kind of stuff. Because, oh no, that can't be true. You're just wasting your time on something stupid. They believe everything that boob tube has told you. And I was never that kind of person. I always was a free thinker. Let me make up my own mind on these topics, not you. So I started to walk down this path. And right away I realized, wow, there's been mass manipulation of our thoughts on this. Because the more I read, the more intrigued I got. And of course, I went to that Patterson-Gimlin footage from 1967, Bluff Creek, California, Northern California, where Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, two old rodeo cowboys, filmed a Bigfoot. And I watched that. I watched it probably 10 times. And I thought, this is pretty weird. It looks real. I'm intrigued. So I did more research, and I wanted to go back into the historical chronicle and see, is this just a modern day issue, or has this been going on for hundreds of years? And it puts more meat on the bone if it's been going on for years. But it wouldn't have stopped me from looking at it, even if it was a more recent phenomenon. So, when I was starting to do the work, I was putting together the stories that eventually went into this book, sold on our website. And the only thing this book is a listing of newspaper articles. And the articles went as far back as I could find them. That would be 1680, and I stopped at 1923 because of copyright issues. All of the articles are reprinted exactly in here as I got them, all around the world. And they all talk about a Bigfoot sort of creature. Now, when I was doing the book, I had all these articles put together in this binder at the local Kinko's, and I sent it to Ben, my son. I said, Ben, I want you to look at this and tell me what you think. He said, wow, Dad, that's pretty impressive. That really goes a long way to substantiating what you're talking about. I said, yeah. Well, then Ben, being the person he is, he went back into historical religious text, into the Bhagavad Gita, and found stories in there that support a bipedal human type entity that they talk about. Well, heck, I couldn't find anything like that. So Ben, you did me good. That really put more fuel on the fire. And I kept going. Now, when I started to look at these historical articles, I was reading them, and it wasn't as the topic was being portrayed. Now, I'm going to read you a couple of the articles right out of my book, Bigfoot, Wild Man, and Giants. And I want you to just listen to what it says. Okay, this is the Times in London, January 4th, 1785. This is the exact article. There's lately arrived in France from America a wild man who was caught in the woods 200 miles back from the Lake of the Woods by a party of Indians. They had seen him feral several times, but he was too swift of foot that they could by no means get up with him. Till one day, having the good fortune to find him asleep, they seized upon and bound him. He is near 7 feet high, covered with hair, has but little appearance of underflanding, whatever that is, and is remarkably sullen and untraceable. When he was taken, half a bear was found lying by him, which he had but just killed. Again, Times London, January 4th, 1785. This article, the Long Island Star, Brooklyn, New York, 16th of September, 1818. Report says, in the vicinity of Ellisburg was seen the 30th unit by a gentleman of unquestioned veracity, an animal resembling the Yahoo. Remember the old story about a Yahoo and settlers in America? Look it up. Wild man of the woods. It is stated that he came from the woods within a few rods of the gentleman. When he stood and looked at him, then his flight in a direction which gave a perfect view of him some time. He is described as bending forward when running, hairy, and the heel of the foot spread narrow, spreading at the toes. Hundreds of persons have been in pursuit for several days, but nothing further is heard or seen of him. The frequent and positive manner in which the story comes induces us to notice it. We wish not to impeach the veracity of this highly favored gentleman, but it is proper that such naturally improbable, if not impossible, events should be established in the mouth of at least 2 or 3 eyewitnesses to entitle them to credibility. There's an investigative journalist in 1818. 1829, the Evening Post, New York. It's actually, here's the story. Indian superstitions. The Choctaw Nation, it appears from one of the late statutes which gives us law, entertains some singular superstitions respecting witches and wizards. The Alabama Intelligencer says that the more important part of the Indians believe the existence of a wild man of the woods who confers supernatural powers. How many times have you heard Bigfoot has supernatural powers? Now, part of the Bigfoot world is going to squash that like a bug on the windshield. They don't want you to hear it. They don't want you to think it. They don't want you to believe it. But this is way back in 1829. The person wishing to receive such powers hangs his intestines on some bar of a tree and thereupon is enabled to work all manner of mischief unseen until he resumes them. The doctors say that in that same paper have been in the habit of pronouncing any one of them called to see bewitched by some particular Indian. There was a sufficient warrant of friends in the patient without further ceremony to attack and kill with impunity the person pronounced by the doctor to be a witch. In this way, many innocent persons have fallen victims to this particular superstition. The enlightened Indians and headmen are ridiculous on the subject, but have found popular faith too strong and deep-rooted to be met. So that was an article that kind of blended over the supernatural powers of a wild man with a witch. Now, I'm not going to read you this whole article, but it's called The American Expedition of Discovery from 1820 to 1821. Again, it's in the book. But just one section. It says, after crossing the mountains, they passed 386 different Indian tribes, some perfectly white, some entirely covered with hair, who were among the most singular and so wild that the company were compelled to run them down with horses. I found that fascinating. You don't find Indians completely covered in hair. But as I've just told you before, I've got an article from the early 1900s that talks about a tribe in the Northwest that talked about a tribe that was completely covered in hair that they traded with. Okay, we're building. Keep with me. This one's called The Wild Men of Wildboro. This is a New York article in 1855. The following communication is relative to the discovery of a wild man in Wildboro, but this is in Maine, was handed to the editor of the Thomason Journal. The journal says there are several persons who can vouch for the truth. It says, on the morning of January 22nd, while engaged in chopping wood a short distance from my house in Waldboro, I was startled by the most terrific scream that ever greeted my ears. It seemed to proceed from the woods nearby. I immediately commenced searching round for the cause of this unearthly noise. But after a half hour I searched, I resumed my labors, but had scarcely struck a blow with my axe when a sharp streak burst out of the air. Looking up directly, I discovered an object about 10 rods in front of me, standing between two trees, which had the appearance of a miniature human being. I advanced toward it, but the little creature fled as I neared it. I gave chase and after a short run succeeded in catching it. The little fellow turned out to a most imploring look upon me, and then uttered a sharp, shrill shriek resembling the whistle of an engine. I took him to my house and tried to induce him to eat some meat, but failed in an attempt. I then offered him some water, which he drank a small quantity. I next gave him small dried beech nuts. He is a male species about 18 inches in height, and his limbs are in perfect proportion. With the exception of the face, hands, and foot, he is covered in hair in a jet black hue. Whoever may wish to see this strange spectacle of human can gratify their curiosity by calling at my house in the eastern part of Waldoboro, near the town Tow Bridge Tavern. I gave these facts to the public to see if there's anyone who can account for this wonderful phenomenon. Friends, this was in a local paper. To think that it's not true is ridiculous. Detroit Free Press, November 1858. Wild people in Lancaster, PA. A thing like a man but hairy as a bear has been seen frequently by people. It was very, very wild and strong. It was once seen in a cow pen socking the cows. When discovered, it started as if about to fight and then turned and fled, bounding like a deer. It walks upright and is supposed to be a wild man. The Bastrop, Texas Advertiser tells a strange story of a child, about 2 years old, straying in the woods and found on the third day 10 miles from home. It passed 2 creek bottoms, thickets filled with thorns, briars, and bush. One found it was perfectly wild and even outran its mother when she tried to catch it and struggled against its captors. When taken home, it again started for the woods. Sounds like a missing 411 case. And that was in 1858. Friends, you kind of see where I'm going with this? Now, I can't tell you that every article must be true, but I can tell you that every article, when you read them, has contents that seem to be related to previous incidents. 1868, Coshocton, Ohio. Another wildman has been found, this time in the Manitou Islands in Lake Michigan. He is 8 feet tall, covered with hair, has a beard hanging down to his waist, and an intellectual brow. There is a story that some 20 years ago, a woman lost a child of 4 years on the island, and this is supposed to be the boy grown up. Those who have seen him are anxious to catch up in time to get to his, well, could that be a boy? Obviously not. Not living on that island with no clothes in the middle of winter. Again, another article. Michigan, 1869. Fight with a wild man. Gallipolis, Ohio is the location. Is excited over a wild man who was reported to haunt the woods near the city. He goes naked and covered with hair, is gigantic in height, and his eyes start from their eye sockets. A carriage containing a man and a daughter was attacked by him a few days ago. He's said to have bounded at the father, catching him in a grip like that of a vice, and hurling him upon the ground, falling upon him and endeavoring to bite and scratch him like a wild animal. The struggle was long and fearful, rolling and wallowing in the deep mud, half suffocated, sometimes beneath his adversary, whose burning and maniacal eyes glared into his own with murderous and savage intensity. Just as he was about to become exhausted from exertion, the daughter, taking courage at the imminent death of her parents, snatched up a rock and hurled it at the head of her father's would-be murderer, was fortunate enough to put an end to the struggle by striking him somewhere near the ear. The creature was not stunned, but feeling unequal to further exertion, slowly got up and retired into the neighboring roadway. A lot of these stories out there, folks. And I got to tell you, the more I read, the more I started to believe. This is a Pennsylvania newspaper, 1871. It's called the Tennessee Wildman. We learned that between Sabi and Cranesville, on what is called Piney in McNairy County, a strange and frightful being has been seen on several weeks. He is said to be several feet high and possessed with great muscular power. His eyes are unusually large and fiery red, with hair hangs in a tangled and matted mass of jet below his waist, and his beard reaches below his middle. His entire body is covered with hair, and his body aspect is most frightful. He shuns the sight of men when approaches with wild and horrid screams of delight every woman who is accompanied by a man. He sometimes, with great caution, approaches houses and should be seeing a man who runs away with astonishing swiftful, leaping at the tallest fences with the ease of a deer, defying alike the pursuit of men and dogs. He has frightened several women by attempting to carry them off, as well as by his horrid aspect, and the whole country around Sabi is in consternation. The citizens are now scouring the woods and are determined either to capture or drive off the monster. Now, people always ask me, well, Dave, you have a lot of women missing. No. Even though you read articles like this that supposedly it's been involved with, no. Wellington, North Carolina, 1877. A wild man in the mountains has been seen in Watauga County. He made tracks that have not been seen since. The landmark says our correspondent describes the wild man as being about 6 feet 5 inches tall with broad shoulders, long apish arms, smooth face, and funnel-shaped head. His body is covered with long dark hair, nearly 2 inches long. His head and greater portion of his forehead is covered with long, luxuriant, dark red tresses. Our correspondent affirms that this is the first time the wild man has ever been seen or heard in that neighborhood. I want you to remember something. When you hear from people that call themselves researchers, that, there's apes, gorillas, or some offbreed of an ape or a gorilla in North America. Take something to the bank, folks. You heard it here from Dave. There has never, ever been ape bones, ape hair, gorilla bones, gorilla hair found in North America. Never. So, have we found giant bones and giant associated facts in North America? Why, yes, we have. See the title of that book? Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants. Well, while I'm out doing my research on this topic, I come across a series of stories of farmers and ranchers tilling their ground. They come across some giant bones that are of giants. And in each one of those cases, the bones are picked up by a museum. Most commonly, it's the Smithsonian Museum in DC. And today, the Smithsonian says they've never had any of those bones. Yet, it's in the articles that I printed in the book. How can that be? Well, I don't think all of these newspapers are lying. So what part of history do they not want us to know? Is it something special about giants being on land? Is it some religious context that they don't want us to refer to or acknowledge? I don't know. I will tell you this, the people that are willing to look outside the bounds of traditional science have been awakened. I was doing a talk in Arkansas several years ago, and I was sitting next to a guy that was doing forbidden geology and archaeology. Brilliant man. And he was sitting next to me and his wife, and he said, "Dave, you're on the right track." He goes, "Our government has been lying to us about everything in this world for years." And I won't go into that rat hole, but suffice it to say that when you're around these people that have these open minds and are sure enough in their own research to get to the bottom of the issue, they don't need any hand-holding from traditional everyday science. I sure as heck don't. So, again, my path is different than everybody else. I didn't have a dog in the fight. I was doing my research, and I said, "Hey, I'll research it for you as long as you're good with whatever I find." And they go, "No, we know you're rational, and you'll get there." I said, "Okay." So, when you talk about articles that are written, I'm going to read you one. It was one of the most eye-opening ones I'd ever read. And this has to do with a major called E.S. Ingraham. He was founder of the Washington Alpine Club and the only explorer and leader of climbs to Rainier slopes in the early days. In an informal publication, Ingraham in 1895 wrote of his meeting with the old man of the crater on Mount Rainier. And this is what he wrote. While my companion and I were exploring the steam caves at the time on my second visit to the crater of Mount Rainier, I noticed peculiar marks and scratchings on the floor of the cave. In some places, the ground appeared as though it had been the scene of a conflict between maddened beasts, so extensive was the disturbance. In other places, there were depressions that might have been made by some flat-footed animal pawing the ground. My curiosity was deeply excited. The lower we descended the cave, the more frequent but less marked became those scratchings. As the sunlight from without became dim, I noticed a peculiar soft glow in the atmosphere of the cave, hardly perceptible, but might have been produced by either light or heat, but it was probably brought about by the presence of some force more subtle than either. I also felt a peculiar sensation of the body, such as a person feels when standing upon an insulated stool with a hand holding the pole of an electrical machine slightly charged. I pay close attention to that one, because a lot of people have stated in the presence of unusual entities, they have a strange sensation. Whether my companion noticed these startling phenomena, I do not know. If he did, he, like myself, remained silent on the subject. The situation was extremely interesting to one of a scientific turn of mind and invited investigation, but I suggested to my companion a return to the outer world. Within my own mind, I decided to visit the cave later alone. Later in the night, when my 3 bedfellows were asleep, I cautiously crawled from under my scanty covering and was soon in the cave again. While it was intensely dark within and cold without, the warmth of the steam cave soon restored my benumbed body to an unusual degree of comfort, and my sleepy senses resumed unwonted activity. Slowly groping my way along the floor of the cave, I was soon within the influence of a mysterious glow that I had noticed upon my first descent. The situation was weird and startling. Midnight in a crater. The vaulted sky above you, and the only familiar object with the hot rocks and hissing steam when you're suggesting what was once and what may be, to leave my sleeping companions and the last familiar object to descend toward the source of this heat and steam. To go down towards the earth's hot interior all tended to try my nerves and fill my mind with strange forebodings. While prudence and my caution would bid me return to my companions and leave the mysteries of the cave unsolved, I still cautiously groped my way onward. The sense of feeling became acutely again. I could readily keep at the center of the cave by extending my hand to either side and noting the change in temperature caused by the adjacent ice wall. The mysterious influence of a still more mysterious force enabled me to know my surroundings quite distinctly. As before stated, the steam cave seemed to radiate from the center of the crater, a singular passage branching 2 or more years to the end. I had reached the point where another passage joined and the more properly separated from one I was following, and I was startled by a noise, followed by several stones rolling down the tributary passage. Had my companion of the first visit noticed this mysterious things that I had, and was he, like myself, seeking to discover their cause? Huck commentary on my reading. I quickly stepped within the recesses of the ice wall on my left and awaited developments. I had not long to wait, for almost immediately there came, now making an attempt to crawl, a figure of strange and grotesque appearance down the passage. It stopped within a few feet of me, writhing and floundering very much as a drowning man would do when drawn from the water as he was about to sink for the last time. Its shape was nearer that of a human being than of an animal. The crown of its head was pointed, with bristled hair pointing in every direction. The eyeballs were pointed too, and while they appeared dull and visionless at times, there was an occasional flash of light from the points, which increased in frequency and brilliance as the owner began to revive. The nail of its fingers and toes were long and pointed and resembled polished steel more than a hardened cuticle. I discovered that the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet were hard and calloused. In fact, the whole body, while human in shape except the pointedness of the parts I have mentioned, seemed very different in character from that of the human species. There was nothing about the mysterious being, however, that would make it impossible that its ancestry of long ages ago might have been human beings like ourselves. Yet by living in different surroundings and under different conditions, many of their characteristics changed. By degrees, this strange being began to revive. Gradually, an electric glow covered the entire body with light centers at the ends of the pointed nails and eyes on the top of the head. It seemed to accomplish its revivification by rubbing its hands vigorously together. As soon as it was able to stand, it began to rub its feet rapidly on the floor of the cave. This increased the glow of the body and caused the light centers to shine and increase brilliantly. It seemed to receive some vital fluid from the earth that at once gave its new vigor to its whole system. Involuntarily, I imitated its actions and immediately found myself undergoing a very peculiar sensation. It seemed to be growing in accord with the strange being, who then for the first time noticed my presence. He at once redoubled his former movements. He would rub his hands vigorously together and then quickly extend the points in my direction. I went through the same maneuver with a similar result, though apparently in a much lesser degree. The effect was magical. I was becoming en rapport with the old man of the crater. I could see a brilliant point of light gradually forming on the crown of his head, feeding my own hair, beginning to rise above my knit cap, and I felt my hair bristling toward a common point. The light on the crown seemed to form an arch above and between us, and we were in communication, in bold letters. There is an icy passage known as the interior of the earth with the exterior by means of a new medium, and rather an old medium newly applied. Two intelligent beings of different races were enabled to communicate imperfectly, at first, of course, with each other. For an hour I received the impressions from the old man in the crater. It is a strange story I got from him. While the time was comparatively short, yet what he told me, not by voice or look, but by subtle agency not known or understood by me, would fill a volume of pages. Finally, expressing doubt of what he communicated, he commanded me to follow him. I anticipated such a demand and was ready to resist it. So when he turned to descend to the hot interior of the earth, I was to believe by a superhuman effort I broke the spell and hastened upward and back into my sleeping companions. This is no myth. The old man told me of his abode in the interior, of another race to which he belonged, and the traditions of that race, of convulsions and changes on the earth long, long ago, of the gradual contraction of a belt of matter around earth until it touched the surface, hemming it many of the inhabitants and drowning the remainder, and of the survival of a single pair. All was shut out and the atmosphere became changed. Gradually, this remaining pair was able to conform to the new order of things and became the parents of a race which is, for want of a better name, I will call Subranians. This old man of the crater had wandered far away from the abode of the race in his desire to explore. Far away from his home we had met, each out of his unusual sphere. In August of 1954, around 10 a.m., we made our most extensive exploration. Up until that time, only two persons occasions have descended as far as we could without flashlights. The floor falls away about 25 to 30 degrees and consists mostly of pumice and loose rock. We followed the largest tunnel downward to the right. The flashlights were on our source of light. As we kept going to the largest tunnel, seemed to be dropping away to the right. Once we had a tunnel through the ice, that is when the floor as well as the walls and the ceiling were ice, ended up on top of an 8-foot drop. The story goes on and tells about the interior of Rainier. Now, why did I tell you that story? Certain things about it have been told about Bigfoot over the years. Well, what do you mean, Dave? Well, some of the more unusual things about Bigfoot are what he saw: electrical charges, electricity related to it. There was no mention there of hair on the body. And I don't know if there was, but all of the unusual things that have gone on with Rainier over the years, I always included that story in the bundle related to Bigfoot. Bigfoot stories around Rainier are historical, and there are hundreds. So, is it related? I don't know. But it's worthy to know that that story exists, and it exists on Mount Rainier. No other mountain. Now, the only other mountain I know of that has subterranean type stories related to it is Mount Shasta. And some of those stories are fantastical at best. Now, Ingraham, who wrote that story that I just read to you, was a pretty famous explorer. So I do give it a lot of credibility. Now, in Bigfoot 101, much of the story that I'm going to tell you is going to revolve around that book, Tribal Bigfoot. I suggest you get it, and it will help you understand where we're going with this educational forum. You can buy it on my website. Now, why is this book special, and why does it have such good reviews online? Go look at Amazon. Don't buy it there, but just look at Amazon. I can tell you a couple things. First of all, when the businessman asked me to review this topic, I immediately thought of a man I had worked with before at the police department named Gil Zamora. Gil is a brilliant artist, and he's a brilliant forensic artist, meaning somebody could sit down with him who was, say, a victim of a robbery, and he could draw the sketch of the suspect seen through the eyes of his witness. And damn, if that person, when they were caught, didn't look like he was sitting in the room when Gil did the drawing. It's almost like he has a supernatural ability. So I had a deep appreciation for forensic artists. Well, Gil had retired, moved away, and my search started right at the beginning for the best forensic artist in the world. One of the things I did was I started to look for an area within a 5-hour drive of where I lived that I could do my research. That was a reasonable time frame to get there early morning, start work, and then put in a full week and get back. I started looking. And it only made sense that the best footage of Bigfoot in the world, the Patterson-Gimlin footage, was filmed right in my backyard, Northern California. And there was a reservation there named Hoopa that had its own police force, had its own hotel, had internet. And I made a list of criteria I needed to be successful. I needed internet. I needed local law enforcement. I needed stories from the area over decades, if not centuries, for historical perspective. And I took a compass, made a 5-hour arch around my house, and Hoopa was on the outer reaches of that 5 hours, but I made it work. Now, one of the first calls I made up there was to a policeman that knew somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody. I told him what I was doing. He goes, "Dave, we'll take care of you. Come on up here, meet the gang, and we'll introduce you to some elders." And quickly, I had some fantastic, credible witnesses to what was going on up there. But taking a couple steps back, as I knew this, I knew I was going to have to find a world-class forensic artist. Friends, sometimes when you're working, things are just flowing right. The energy is with you. Things were supposed to happen. And damn, if this didn't happen, when one morning I woke up and I was doing a search and I found the name Harvey Pratt. Harvey was the assistant director of the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation. He was the chief forensic artist for the state of Oklahoma. And I saw some of his work. It was impeccable. Drawings of suspects Harvey did and drawings of the suspect when apprehended. Dead on ringer. I knew I had my guy. But you know why I really knew I had him? Because in his biography, Harvey was a Cheyenne Arapaho Native American chief. And can you realize bringing a chief into a Native American reservation to work with you? Tribal members at every place we went instantly respected him. It was a beautiful set of coincidences that worked in our favor. First time I met Harvey, I felt a glow, and I'm not kidding you, a glow coming from him about what a warm, gentle, spiritual human being he is. I'm not kidding. It was at the same time that I met his wife, Gina. Same thing. Everything about Harvey, he wanted to learn with me. He was fascinated by the work. He had heard the stories when he was a young boy, and even as an adult, from tribal members in his area about Bigfoot. And so Harvey and I started working together like partners on this project. And that's why Sketches by forensic artist Harvey Pratt, and they're all in here. Every witness we sat down with, Harvey did the sketch. I've used him on countless other sketches over the years. I'll be honest with you. He's one of my best friends in the whole world. I'd do anything for Harvey. Now, a couple years ago, Harvey made a drawing for the Smithsonian on the Native American War Memorial they were proposing. And they were taking in applications. And there were like 50 applications from people all over the world and Native Americans. And it was him and his son Nathan. Yeah, Nathan Pratt, awesome artist, that came up with the theory and what they build. He won the contest. Harvey Pratt. And the dedication is going to be to his Native American War Memorial is going to be this Veterans Day. And I'm so proud of Harvey. It's like a life's dream to do something like that for your people. There's no more deserving man that I know of. And we talked about it, and I said, Harvey, Angie and I will be there for you. And he goes, Dave, don't even go. He told me this a year ago when that was being planned. Don't even go. He goes, I probably wouldn't be able to spend any time with you. They're going to have me going to meetings, seeing these people, seeing these chiefs. There's going to be thousands of Native Americans there. And he goes, you're my best buddy, but I couldn't even see you. I understood that. Which is the reason, one of the reasons I knew he was going to be gone that weekend, and I knew he couldn't go. And when our distribution company gave us the date for the premiere, it happened to be that date, Veterans Day weekend. Harvey's okay with it. He knows. He's going to be so busy. Nathan will be with him. That'll be one of the greatest husband-son bonding sessions. No better pair in the world that I can think of than those two. And I pray that everything goes great for Harvey and Nathan and Gina. So, that is your first class on Bigfoot 101. I am telling you that it is important for you to get that book. Now, this book If you have people in your family that say, oh, that topic is stupid, that was just a man in a suit up in Bluff Creek in 67. And I've given this book to a lot of people. I have never given it to somebody and had them come back to me and say, phony. All those stories are phony. It's never happened. Most of the people come back shocked and stunned reading the stories from years past. Most think it's all orchestrated, but when you look back in the history and the academics of the stories, you realize it can't be that way. And I'm going to end you with the last story. It's one of the oldest stories. I picked this one out for you because it's important. This is in September 1680. And the source of it is a photocopy of a pamphlet written by Julio Alberto de la Honosa was reproduced in its entirety by the Fenómenos Celestes in Pasado in Barcelona. And here's what it is. September 1680, Lisbon, Portugal. Landing of a hairy occupant. A large black cloud mass landed in a field, releasing a huge hair-covered being that was seen briefly and disappeared. That's all it said. September 1680. A black cloud-like mass landed in a field. Well, it's a UFO. Was it a spaceship? I don't know. But that was the oldest date of mention that I could find anywhere on the topic. But this is going to be an interesting walk. And please don't discount it on its face. Please give it time to develop. And if you respect me and you're in for a very educational class. Thanks for being here. Huck and I appreciate it. And she's up. She's been moving around. She's kicked the... Hey, he's a good girl. He's a good girl. Hey, can you shake hands? Shake hands? Come on. Oh, that's a good girl. Yes, a good girl. Yes. He's a good girl. Yes. Okay. This is for Dave Paulides for Huck TV. Be safe. Treat people well. Do something nice for somebody. Paulides out.